Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Abigail, and Cassidy is going to be leading us on a conversation of precious. She's really going to be taking us into a word study of where do we find the word precious in the Bible, and how does God intend us to view the word precious?
Right, to give you like 2 points that we're kind of looking to dig into is the Lord precious to you, or finding different examples, like she had said, of precious throughout the Bible. But this came up the other day when we were in the car, we're listening to worship music, and Tucker, he's my 4-year-old. He has so many questions for me.
We love that.
Really getting extreme with the amount of questions. I'm like, can we be done with the questions for a while? But anyways, I'm trying to answer as many questions as possible.
Yeah.
And he heard this word precious, and of course he said it in toddler speak. He didn't know how to say precious.
It was just really precious.
Yes, and so he's like, Mom, what does precious mean? And I was like, oh, and I was trying to think back to during the song, where was that used, and trying to tell him in context for a 4-year-old, what does precious mean? And I was a little bit tongue-tied. I was like, oh, that's a good question. And so I stumbled over my words, and I was like, well, it's something worth a lot of money. And I'm like, but that doesn't really make sense to the song. So I'm like trying to think through, how can I tell you this differently? And I thought instead, like the jewel on Mommy's ring, because he looks at it often. It's an expensive thing, and it's important to me. And he was like, oh, like, you don't want to lose it? No, I don't want to lose it because it's important to me.
There's meaning and value behind it.
And so if I was going to tell you the definition from the dictionary, it would be of high value, costly, dear to you, even in an emotional matter, important, as not to be wasted. I'm really not good at definitions, and so when he is asking me, what does this mean, that mean, and it's definitely out of my comfort zone. But it stretched me more than I think it was for the 4-year-old.
Right, he probably doesn't even remember the conversation.
Yeah, and so I really stopped on the word precious. I was like, that's a really good question. What does precious mean to us? And so here we are. We're going to be digging into what does precious mean to you. I wish I knew which song we were listening to. And I tried to go back through my playlist and find it. It was on shuffle. I have no idea which song we're listening to, because that would be a great song of the week for us. As we dig into what does precious mean to you, is my life reflecting that Jesus is truly precious to me? If anyone asked us the question outright, is God, Jesus, the Bible, all the Sunday school things, is he precious to you?
Oh, of course.
Yes. Oh, yes, of course he is. But I think if you really pondered on it, is there evidence that Jesus is precious to you?
And what would that evidence look like?
Right. Is it going to mean dropping things out of our schedule to make it to church? Is it that sports isn't going to be something in your child's schedule that takes the place of church? It's just...
Well, and I even like that you use the word drop, because I think about if something precious were falling, you would drop everything else to pick it up and to make sure that it doesn't hit the floor.
So is he going to be more important than everything else on our plate? Is he at the bottom? Like, well, I'll get to my quiet time if I have the energy and the time for it at the end of my day. I don't like... That's honestly how I used to run my day.
Right.
Like, well, I'll do these things first so that I can really relax and spend my quiet time with him then. So I don't have anything else on my mind. Like, no, like he should be like the first thing on my mind of the day.
Ray Comfort has a catchy phrase, but essentially it's Bible before anything else. And that's convicting as well, where it's like, oh, okay.
Yes.
Before anything else? Everything?
Yeah, I've honestly been training myself to do that more often. Like, before I eat breakfast, before the dog and the cat get their food, because that's normally the first thing of my day is feed me, feed my animals.
Right.
And my kiddos.
The kids are in there somewhere. They might get fed. We'll see. Right. See how precious they are that day.
goodness sakes. You always have something to toss me under the bus. Make me sweat a little bit. So, yes, is Jesus precious in our quiet time? We've really been landing on quiet time and digging into God's Word in a lot of our conversation.
Yeah.
And I really do think it's what we're learning is what we're talking about. And this is how we're learning to be faithful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as we continue on in our conversation about is he precious, I dug into a couple of fun books that were recommendations by my husband, and they are really fun. Like, I'm obsessed with this story. It kind of reminds you of like the Divergent series. I don't know.
Sure, yep, I
Yeah,
remember
so it's
reading
kind
those.
of like that, where the people in the book are like divergents and they're different than everybody else. And I like a good story like that.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm so excited to read this book that I will bring it with me in the car just in case we get bored somewhere or whatever. And I was looking at this book as I brought it in the car, and Alex was like, oh, like you really do like those books, don't you? Okay, do you see where I'm going with this conversation? Because never have I brought my Bible in the car, like specifically to be like, well, just in case we have a couple minutes of downtime, I'll bring my Bible with me to read. Because are we so excited to learn about God and to dig into his themes that you want to bring it with you everywhere? And maybe that sounds a little bit extreme. Maybe not.
Is it? I mean, now that you're talking about bringing this other book, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit here.
Make me sweat some more.
Well, in your benefit, and say, we turn on the radio and we listen to Christian music, or we'll listen to preaching, or listen to the Bible app. And so while you might not necessarily always bring your Bible with you, we do oftentimes still go and gravitate towards listening to things that are...
That's a really good point, I think. Right, so you're trying to
don't
bring
beat yourself up too much, but also I 100% see your point.
Like, we do have Bible apps on our phone, and so there's that. But also bringing in worship music is a form of worshiping when you can't stop to read. And so are we making him precious to us in that sense? A verse that I have been dwelling on is from Psalm 34. And I talked about that I'm memorizing this chapter. And I just put on Instagram this week that I was memorizing this. And in the verse app, they do actually have a group that you can join and have other people do it with you. And I'd seen that, but I've never tried it. So I just put out the link on my story. And I was like, if people want to join in, but maybe I should put it on the podcast story so that if you guys want to join in on memorizing what we're working on, we could figure that out.
Accountability
That'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
And so with Psalm 34, really quick on my mind, verse 3 says, "Oh, magnify the Lord with me, let us exalt his name together." And the exalt right there is what you're worshiping, and it says together. And so as we're thinking about this verse example, what you spend your time worshiping and exalting and making sure that other people know that you love it, I think that's kind of like what's precious to you. You talk about it a lot. And maybe it's your kids. If you're trying to start a conversation with someone even, and you try to pinpoint things that are important to them and that they enjoy talking about. And in the sense of Jesus being precious to you, it should be known that we exalt him with our mouths. And in Psalm 34, it's talking about us blessing the Lord with our mouth, exalting together. That's with other people. So that's not just by yourself. I thought that was an interesting thing. Exalt in definition means to praise, to raise in rank, to honor, power, character, quality, etc., to elevate it. So you only exalt something and make it obvious to those around you if it's precious to you. So that's connecting back to the main idea that if it's precious to you, there's going to be evidence that it's precious to you.
Absolutely.
Precious is taking something as higher importance, and that can look like exalting or raising his name higher than myself. Let us exalt his name together. Let us bless his name day and night. So with that kind of baseline of this is precious, this is what it means to us right now in this study. But let's dig into our word study, finding where precious is found throughout the Bible. We have 7 different points where I found the word precious, and maybe there's more, but I was trying not to be super long-winded with our examples. Okay, so my first example that I had found was in Mark 14, 3-9. And this is the example of the precious alabaster flask of ointment. In season 1, we did go diving into the alabaster flask and the woman who had done the pouring out. And so we think of this to be Mary. It was one of the Marys in the Bible that knelt down before Jesus and dumped out her very expensive perfume. And so it was precious in the sense that it was very costly. It was worth a lot. And if you were going to put a cost of what this would be in our money, it would be somewhere between $30,000 to $50,000.
Wow.
It's a lot of money. It's like a full year's wage to her. And so it was something that was precious. And in her eyes, she saw Jesus as worthy of this precious example of pouring out. And others looking on, though, thought that this was a waste because they thought that this precious ointment was more precious than that of being used on a man's feet.
Yeah. How dare you put this on Jesus, the Son of God, the King of Kings.
Exactly. So you have two heart postures, though, that you can look at. You have a woman that says, you are so precious to me that I will pour out a full year's worth of money on
your feet.
On this.
Yeah.
And the other people's heart posture was not there. It's like, no man would be worthy of this. Why would you do that?
Right.
Let me read verse 7 where it says, Jesus says, "For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you want, you can do good for them, but you will not always have me." And that was such an important note that Jesus spoke to them is, you're not going to always have me in person.
Right.
And that was such a precious moment. A second example is of precious stones that is mentioned in 2 Samuel 12 on David's crown, or in 2 Chronicles 3 is the precious things that go into the temple. And this is going to leak into our example number 3. Here is when we're going into the New Testament of Paul's example in 2 Corinthians 3. And this one, I'm going to have to explain this a little bit.
A little context.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to do my best to dig into it without getting too deep. But I had to go to a commentary to really dig into what does this verse mean. I didn't necessarily see it on surface level.
Sure.
So let me try to take you like a level deeper here, okay? So it mentions the word precious in 2 Corinthians 3, verses 10 through 17. And Paul is talking about building the foundation of the church in Jesus Christ. He explains the difference of building with these precious and good quality stones. He's not necessarily talking about jewels here. He's talking about the quality of these
materials.
Yes, materials that were used in the actual structure of the building. And so it was a good quality of structure. And this is what was used to build the temple. Versus he has the contrast of materials of wood, hay, and straw. And those are not necessarily the best quality.
Right. We can see different homes that were built with the thatch, but the big bad wolf came and blew it all down. You know, it was just
Right.
a little piggy's house with the bricks that stood up.
These are more of the I don't know.
The enduring or
I think
base materials.
Yes, I think it would be the base materials used for living or things where people didn't have a lot of money. So he's not necessarily talking about actually physically building a building here, but rather how we were building up the temple of believers. In his case, he's talking about the building up of the church here. The passage explains that, quote, "Fire will test each one's work." And in the testing, what do you think is going to last longer? Our precious things or our wood and straw. And so I don't think I have to dig into that too deep for you to know here. But if you're building up with the wrong things, it is going to be devastating.
Yeah.
Paul notes that it wasn't the amount of work done, but rather the quality of what was used. The passage goes on to explain that we are the temple of God. and his Spirit dwells in us at the moment of salvation. So the temple of God is holy, so it matters what we do.
Amen.
And he's talking about the quality of our hearts. Is it going to be
Yeah.
that of precious stone, or is it going to be something that when the fire, the trials come, that the wood and the straw type things in our lives just puff up into smoke?
Right.
And it didn't matter for anything.
Well, not to distract from this, but I love that you brought that in, because I've never viewed the passage in that way. But even what are we building our church up on? Is our church built on wood, hay, and stubble? And I think that you can look at a lot of churches, and when a split comes in, or when some kind of adversity comes in, that's exactly what happens. Suddenly you find that it wasn't God that was precious to them. It was some random church disagreement that was precious to them.
I think even thinking through the church, we often separate ourselves from thinking of being part of the church because it's as a whole, but each person makes up the church. Yeah. You are part of the church.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's be a precious stone, not hay or wood.
Yes, before we move on to our next point, the commentary had such a good point on this. It was very convicting. The commentary says it like this: it is a sobering thought. Many, many people who believe that they are serving God but are doing it in an unworthy manner or unworthy materials will come to find in eternity that they have in reality done nothing for the Lord. He says some will be saved, but with a life that was wasted and received no crown to give Jesus for his glory. Wow. Okay, is what we're going to do going to last for eternity, or is it for the here and the now?
Right.
Okay. Our point number 4 is coming from Psalm 116:15. This is another verse that I was using Google to help point out verses that included precious. I went to this one and was like, what? Like a little bit side, like a dog begging for
This was one of the first verses that came to my mind, actually.
I love that we can have different experience in our study in the Word. Okay, so precious in the sight of the Lord, and it's Yahweh there, it's all capitals, is the death of his saints. First, I read that and I was like, that's pretty morbid. You think that the death of saints is precious, Lord? Let's dig into it a little bit. The enemy likes to cloud death as a curse. But we know that as believers, that death is not a penalty. It is a place where the author, God, of our story says it's time to join him in glory. And he sees that as precious, that when he is united with his children, that is precious to him. It is even said that these are the words of the hymn that Jesus sang with his disciples the night before his own death. The most precious moment of death was the one where Jesus set us free in the blood, where he washed our sin as white as snow for all time, for all of those who believe. And so, yes, I do think that this verse is a very precious moment that you can see. We are precious to God. Right. He wants to be with us, and that's going to be in eternity as children of him.
Well, and I think that's something, too, we oftentimes neglect to see is, we see a death and it's like, oh, God, God is just okay with them dying, and, we're separated from them. But we completely neglect the fact that, no, God is on the other side. He's waiting on the other side, and he's bringing them to himself. And he values the life that they lived, but he values the eternity that they'll now experience with him. And
what a comfort.
Right. Absolutely.
Kind of off of that point is point number 5 is from 1 Peter 1:19, and it talks about the precious blood of Jesus. And we just kind of covered that with our last point, so I'm not going to continue digging into that. But our point number 6 comes from 2 Peter 1, and there are a lot of points in 2 Peter 1 that talk about the word precious. So let me just kind of go through my notes, and I'll spell this out for you. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness. This is verse 3. Through the knowledge of him who called us to his own glory and excellence. Verse 4. By which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped from the corruption that is in the world because of the sinful desire. Those two verses go hand in hand. That's why I was trying to read verses 3 and 4. My main highlighted point here is by which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises. But this is a little bit of an explanation and thank you commentary that I can relate some of these words onto you. It is Jesus' glory and virtue that motivated him to call us. And it is his glory and virtue that draw us to him. And so this is all part of the explanation. He explains the value of the glory and virtue of God that calls us. By these he gave us exceedingly and great, precious promises. And that means that the promises of God are based upon his glory and virtue. And they're therefore perfectly reliable because God can never compromise his glory and his virtue. If you don't have a commentary app on your phone yet, now is the time to get one because it's honestly changed my complete study of the Bible where I quickly run over things and get a basic understanding. But I would have never grasped that on my own to realize the amount of precious promises that he gives to us.
Well, right. And then that can be a whole study on its own is, okay, well, what are these promises?
Right.
Why are they precious?
I
And
love
really
thinking about the
digging in.
promises of God. It's a beautiful thing. I really, really love thinking through that. Okay, we made it to our final point.
Woohoo.
We are on point number 7, Psalm 139, 17 through 18. And this was honestly one of the first things that ran through my mind is thinking about the conversation of being precious. Well, is God precious to us? And that's part of the conversation. Second part of the conversation could be, well, it's because we are precious to him. And we've covered that in a little bit, but Psalm 139 really dives into how much Jesus knows, sees us, loves us, formed us. It's on a whole new level of like, this is a beautiful example of how precious we are to him and how he should be precious to us. So verses specifically 17 and 18, if you want to read it for us.
All right, verse 17 and 18. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more than the sand. I awake and I am still with you.
This is David's amazement and adoration, considering how God knew and cared for him. So at the beginning here, it says, how precious to me are your thoughts. And in this instance, the word precious means weighty. And so you're much better at definitions. How can we describe weighty as precious?
It really makes a big impact and it brings almost like a responsibility, or it's humbling.
It's a good way to think through that. They're talking about David. He's not alarmed at the fact that God knows all about him. On the contrary, he is comforted and even feels himself to be enriched as with a casket of precious jewels that God should think upon him in the believer's treasure and pleasure. And that's a quote from Spurgeon. Another quote I was reading through was comparing how proud we are to even get a precious glance of a king in our direction, or in our case these days, a celebrity. And it's like, oh my word, I got a picture with so-and-so. I saw them at the airport and it was like the biggest thing in your brain. It was very precious to you. Okay. But 18 is pointing out that God's thoughts towards us is how he sees and he knows us on a regular basis, like all the time. Like
as many as the
sand. How incredible is that? And how precious of a thought to think God sees me and he knows me and he wants to. It's not a duty. He wants to do this for us. He cares for us. And so I really thought that was a great way to end out our conversation of precious. We started out with, is he precious to us? Because there should be evidence that he is important to us. And if there's not, he needs to be having more of a priority in your life that others know about it. And then we just covered more towards in our word study is how God sees us as precious to him. And I really thought that was a fun word study to dig into precious. So we are going to close out here with the song of the week. And I was just explaining to Abigail why this song is so precious to me. This is like too easy.
I know, lots of little puns here.
Song of the week is King of Kings, and it has in parentheses, song session with Seph
Schlueter.
Thank you, with Essential Worship. I can like point at her and she's like, I know it's coming. It's fabulous. We're having a good time over here recording at 10 to Thrive. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we're excited to hang out with you guys again next week.
Bye. Hey, it's Abigail. Find us on Instagram at 10.thrive and leave us a comment. Give us a take it or leave it. Let us know if you found any fruit in this episode or if we got a little lost in the weeds.